Could you get a little closer to the microphone? Because I still can't hear you, and maybe it's my phone listening. I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, it's on my headset. Is anybody else
Okay.
having that problem as well?
Okay.
Yeah, it could be louder for sure.
Okay. Let me see if I can fix that. Give me a moment. Is this any clearer?
It's about the same. I think you're just going to have to talk loud.
Yeah. Pretend
Okay.
you're shouting.
Sounds good. All right.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Hey, there you are.
yeah, so thank you. So anyway, that's the company where we started. We're based in Milwaukee, out of the 3rd Ward, in the Plankinson building. So with that, I'm gonna first describe AgriCycle, what we do, the problem that we're specifically addressing. I'll then walk into the impact that we've had so far and what our focus is, and then toward the end, I'll start talking about more broadly where the field of international development is headed, what does work, what doesn't, in our opinion, and where we're trying to thread the needle in how AgriCycle is working. And sharing my screen again. So every year, 2.8 trillion pounds of food goes to waste. Food waste is a massive issue. It's listed as the #1 problem that if we were to address it would make the biggest difference in addressing climate change as well. Within food waste, there's a lot of different terms and sections of what makes up food waste and the reasons behind it. And that also varies, especially based on the continent that you live on. North America, 60% of all food that is wasted is because of either the retailer or the consumer, meaning that the retailer has overstocked shelves, puts too many things on there, because psychologically, if they overstock a shelf full of mangoes, consumers will buy more mangoes than they otherwise would have if there are only a few mangoes left. And so they did the math and they found out it's more profitable to waste mangoes and sell more than to only sell as many as they would expect to sell. Simultaneously, the other part of food waste is everything that you put in your pantry and goes bad, that you scrape off your plate into the garbage. All of that is food waste as well. In sub-Saharan Africa, 95% of everything that is wasted is on the opposite end. So it's food loss. Food loss happens between the producer and the market, meaning farmers have invested everything they possibly can into creating those products, but they'll never see return on it. That happens for one of 3 reasons. The first is that local markets are oversaturated. So the products that are farmed at smallholder farms in sub-Saharan Africa, they bring a basket of 50 mangoes to the market. In northern Uganda, they try selling it for 35 cents. 4 out of 5 women go home that day without having sold that basket of mangoes. They dump the mangoes at the road and make the walk back home easier because they have unlimited fresh mangoes back at home. That's part of food loss because local markets are oversaturated. The next is that supply chains are inefficient. So they can't get the products that are in abundance in certain areas brought to where it would otherwise be more beneficial. So the trucks can't actually bring it to a market that would want to buy it. The third is that there's a lack of access to preservation technologies. So if local supply chains can't get it done, the idea would be to preserve it, turn a fresh mango into a different product that ostensibly has a much longer shelf life and that you could then get to a different market, either locally or globally. The issue is that that technology is not affordable. It's not designed for their use. And it's also, when it does show up, it's normally in isolation. It's the technology only and none of the extra support services that are needed. The majority of food loss worldwide happens because of smallholder farmers, people who farm off of less than 5 to 10 hectares of land. And it makes up 20% of the world population. That's 1.5 billion people. You can look at that as a humanitarian crisis, which it is, but you could also look at that as, you could look at it in many different lenses, whether it's historical colonialism. But the way that we try to frame it to our investors is complete untapped market opportunity. This 20% of the world population, if you approach it from the format of social entrepreneurship, has basically been forgotten. If you take for a second the fact that yes, they are poor, yes, they do live in remote areas that are hard to access, and yes, their selection of products doesn't match what every other investor is trying to sell right now, there's massive opportunity to work with these smallholder farmers to address their actual needs. The current way that their needs are being addressed, typically through nonprofits, through NGOs, through Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, don't work. That's a big statement that I'm making. I wrote failed to move the needle. It's probably a little more tactful. Really the point is that those solutions are based on a technocratic methodology to international development. The idea that a technology can be created and dropped anywhere in the world, which is the purpose behind groups like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They're looking for ubiquitous solutions to global issues. Dropped anywhere in the world, train a few farmers, which is, what they do is special because they actually provide the training to the technology, unlike most NGOs, which just get a donation, send something somewhere and say like, good luck. But they never complete the full circle, because farmers who manage to save more of their fruits and preserve it, and great, they have a food safety certification to produce it, it doesn't change anything for them unless they're actually able to sell it. And then the further point is that once they have that money, they have to actually be able to buy human rights affirming products and services in their area to actually change their livelihoods. Doesn't matter if you have all the cash in the world, if you live, theoretically on an island without anything else on it. So that's the different layers to international development. Where AgriCycle comes in is we combine all of those different pieces together. The first is that we work on, there's three pillars: technology, network, and market. The first is that we design and sell to the farmers. We sell to the farmers low barrier technologies that work without any electricity and are appropriately designed for the rural context that they live in. These solar dehydrators preserve the fruits that grow in a natural overabundance in the areas that they live in, and we train them on how to use them. The second part is on the networks. We build a network of farmers. We have over 40,000 smallholder farmers in our network today. That's over 200,000 people if you include their families. And so our organizing effect to this network allows them to get food safety certifications. We train them on quality assurance, and then we help them get different certifications like non-GMO, organic, that allows us to be able to offer different products. Within that network effect, we're also able to consolidate it into essentially one big cooperative. We built the network specifically for this supply chain that I'm not finished describing, but the supply chain that you'll hear in a second. Now also, since we have so many farmers, we are looking at how to use the network in a different way. With 8,000 farmers in Western Kenya alone, we have empty trucks that show up to these remote villages, empty, and dried fruit are put on them, and then they drive away to the next village, and then eventually back to our pack house. The idea became, what else could we put on the truck that's already visiting the last mile of the supply chain? Very quickly, it was for smallholder farmers: seeds, feeds, fertilizers, and fuels, agricultural inputs. We can get a 30% discount from the manufacturer just by buying in bulk. We can also verify the quality of it and that it's not counterfeit. Half of all seeds planted in Africa are fake. That's a real statistic. Half of all the seeds planted in Africa are counterfeit. So we're able to verify that they are real, get a discount on them. And the farmers pay between 50 to 60% less because they don't have to pay for the cost of transportation. Our truck was already headed out there. AgriCycle then makes 10 to 20% on the volume of the order of those 8,000 farmers because we're doing the work. So we get to make money off of it, but the farmers are getting a 50% discount on verified quality seeds. So that's another way that we're using the network. The third is on the market. That's really our key differentiator compared to almost any other solution out there, is that we're full circle. And not only do we try connecting farmers to a market, we are the market for those farmers. So we buy the products created with our technologies, and then we brand, market, and sell them in the United States, Europe, as ingredients all over the world. And so that's the market development side, is that we are ultimately creating brands that consumers will buy, sometimes because they feel like it's a really good feel-good product and they love the mission behind it. Other times because the mission isn't really focused on, and it's instead the quality of the product or different value propositions that it has. So we don't take an approach of trying to be a charity, of just getting people to buy dried fruit because it's a donation. We're trying to get people to buy it as a normal consumer, fitting in with where the vast majority of money is being transacted, because that's how we can move the most volume of fruits for the farmers we work with. By the end, I also talk about like specifically how much we pay and everything and what the impact is. So on the piece with appropriate technology, I just want to show some of how it all works. These are our dehydrators. They've evolved a lot. They look very simple. They're black plastic trays at this point. Originally, a dehydrator had to have many different pieces: a solar collector, a thermal mass. It had to have a tunnel angled so that the sun would hit it. The ambient air inside would heat up, hot air would rise, and it would go up, and that would enter into a chamber that forces the air just to go up. And inside the chamber, we have trays full of fresh sliced fruits. There's a lot of material. It took up a lot of space. And the biggest issue is that all solar dehydrators have a very hard time maintaining any level of cleanliness, over the long term. And because of that, it's hard to get food safety certifications, hard to maintain standards, just doesn't work. For years, we continued to innovate on solar dehydrators. We got the price down below $100 for the farmers that we worked with, using local materials only. They work without any electricity. That's not solar electricity, I should point out. So it's passive solar. It's just the heat of the sun heating up air and moving it up. We eventually continued to simplify the dehydrator by removing piece by piece of it, and eventually got to trays that perform the functions of the tunnel and the chamber. So these trays, as you can see here, they're nested within each other. So those are a bunch of very thin trays, which makes them very easy to transport. Making them easy to transport and able to nest within each other means that they can be manufactured out of a high quality food grade material in the United States. And so we manufacture these in Wisconsin, actually, in Elkhorn, Wisconsin. And so these dehydrators come nested. Every other tray gets flipped upside down then. And so you can see some of the women here are flipping the tray upside down on top of this one. That creates a cabinet, and those cabinets get stacked on top of each other. When the cabinets are stacked on top of each other, that creates the chamber. And so they line up perfectly with each other. They have holes. As you can kind of see, these are the ridges. There are holes in the ridges. You can see some of the tiniest of holes right there on your screens. So that's where the air passes through. The fact that they're black and made out of high density polyethylene, HDPE, means that they're collecting the heat of the sun and that they're heating up the air inside. Hot air rises, passive solar convection. So hot air goes through the system out the top. Hot air passing through fresh fruits dehydrates them. So we essentially created plastic trays that safely dehydrate fruits and are approved by the FDA, help us build out this entire system. So they're a key part of our design. Appropriate technology overall is the idea of designing technology for the context that they're used in. And that can sound a lot like a more general topic, UX, UI, user experience, user interface. It gets to another level. It's typically focused on an actually engineered project or a product. And it's normally focused in the context of international development or really just working with communities that lack resources, economic resources. So our solar dehydrators are made for where they work in. These are not the best systems that you can pick if you just want to dry fruits in your backyard. They don't need to be FDA food grade. They just need to dry fruits, and that's very easy to do. They don't need to be made in a way that's designed for shipping. The dimensions of these dehydrators take up 1/4 of a shipping pallet, meaning we can put 4 stacks per shipping pallet. that makes sense for what we're doing. Not necessarily for if you want to do something in the backyard of Wisconsin. The benefit of these dehydrators is that every day they are disassembled, brought inside, cleaned, and kept out of the elements. And that's key to how we're able to maintain the standards that we have. So that appropriate design is a key part of, you know, the background I had with Engineers Without Borders, and also our team's approach to engineering. The next piece is our Find My Farm QR codes. So that kind of gets at the responsible storytelling that we have. Every bag of fruit that we sell has a hand-labeled QR code that traces that bag back to the exact cooperative that it came from and tells the story of the women who tried it, the farmers who grew it, and where in the world it came from. We're also building a blockchain back into it so that you can know when the bag was picked, dried, packed, and shipped. That offers great benefits for our ingredient supplying side, that we're able to do traceability, and also that we're able to share that with the consumers so they can feel that they can trust the product more. So Jali Fruit Co. Being our dried fruit, and Jali very quickly. Jali, it's a term for a West African storyteller, a musical storyteller. They regale, you know, communities' histories through song and dance. And so we picked the name Jali because we are trying to share the story of the communities that we work with very accurately, not just through a description that we write, but you know, we hire African copywriters to interview each of our cooperatives to share their story, and then we start to build content around it, specifically the women who work there, and really highlight exactly how our system works, who's behind the bag of fruits. So that is another piece of technology. It's a QR code. It's not new. We didn't invent it in the same way that we didn't invent dehydrators, but it's the way that we're using it that really fits the thing that we're going for, which is elevating the communities that we're working with to not just be suppliers, but to be partners. And then on the right side, you know, I really just edited a slide deck that I had. And so I pulled some of the pictures that were in there just to show some of the areas that we work in. This here is Padibe, Uganda. So this is in northern Uganda, the Acholi area. These are, you know, under 2 mango trees, which are not grown for production, but simply grown for shade. And some of the mangoes are sold, but the vast majority of them are not. That's me. This is from November 2018, trying to explain to the community using a chair and an upside down chair on top of it, how the dehydrator works. So one thing we found is that, you know, we don't need to come with a bunch of technical plans. We don't need to come with a presentation. We honestly just use chairs to describe how the solar dehydrator works and what they'll be buying into. So that's another example of just working with what we've got, because that wasn't ever the intention when we started, but one day we didn't have the materials, and so we used chairs, found out it worked better. The second just being that it's really just about sharing at every step along the way of working with the community, what you're trying to build, where it's headed, what it will do for them. There's a lot of groups in international development that, you know, when I started out, we were being coached a lot on how to approach and speak to communities, you know, poor areas in not America. That we had to be culturally sensitive, that we had to speak in very specific sentences, concise, loudly, that we had to walk around on eggshells, I think, and in this kind of anti-racist approach to international development, which was, you know, like carrying the whole weight of history on your shoulders and trying to not offend anything. In the end, I found that for the most part, the cooperatives that we work with and the communities that we talk to, anytime that we ever tried to do this very roundabout way of hearing what their thoughts were and trying to find a solution together and then developing a potential project and blah, blah, it wasn't our focus. It honestly was a joke for them. We just started pitching exactly what we had. We have a solar dehydrator. It works like this. It could do this for you if you worked this much on it every day, and we promise to buy it at this price. Are you interested? that got the best results and best responses we had. We abandoned the old approach of what, my university, what most nonprofits do, of everyone sits around 3 meetings later, you start to talk about exactly what you're doing. We treated them like actual people rather than subjects to, a framework of how we believe conversations should happen with communities. And we just pitched them exactly what we're doing. We got yeses and nos. Vast majority of them were yeses, and it worked out. So I just want to kind of point that out, because I always think that's very cringeworthy when I see other groups really like step-toeing around issues of poverty. So we treated them like people and simply told them what we were doing, and put the expectation on them to just be able to have the sound judgment enough to say yes or no, rather than pretending that they didn't have the ability to decide for themselves. In here is Patrick. He's our director of East Africa. He's a significant shareholder in the company. So one thing I'll point out is that we do have a lot of equity across our board. He's teaching all the farmers right now how the Find My Farm QR codes work. And so one of the things they love is that like their stories actually get told. They're not just, it's not one Miguel on the back of a coffee bag that is supposed to represent every farmer ever who supplied coffee to that company. That we're actually trying as close as possible to get to the individual person. And then down here, this shows the pack house. Back there is Sylvia, our business manager. And here they are sorting the pineapple that was packed in bulk from one of our cooperatives. So these are just really pictures to show you that it does happen. We ultimately create brands. I'll kind of glaze through this really quickly. The Jali Fruit Co. is a family of fun, ethically sourced, and upcycled sun-dried fruits that are fully traceable from tree to shelf with our Find My Farm QR codes and have no added sugars or preservatives. Tropical Ignition is a better for everyone charcoal that burns hotter and lasts longer, made out of only 3 natural ingredients: coconut shells, palm kernel shells, and cassava starch. It comes in a fully recycled cardboard box that won't rip, won't get dusty, and it has a handle so it's easy to carry, and it comes in 2 sizes. Ola Coral is a really unique situation. The long story short is that we're taking lionfish, an invasive species that's killing coral reefs, which represents half of the world's oxygen and takes away 1/3 of its carbon. And we're killing those fish, turning them into one of the healthiest jerkies that you could buy. 0 grams of fat, 0 grams of sugar, 0 grams of carbs, 16 grams of protein per bag, and less than 100 calories per bag. So it's a fantastic product, creating all these flavors and everything, but ultimately it's still using the same network and supply chain that we built of empowering fishermen who are out of work due to commercial overfishing. And then, as you can see here, the bracelet, the marketing strategy is actually bracelets made out of the fins of the lionfish as an awareness campaign. And then What the Fruit, or Field Better Foods, is a pantry of alternative nutrient-dense flours and many other products and ingredients that are based out of the byproducts of any one of these first 3. So when we dry a mango, there's a mango pit left. Well, we grind that down and turn it into a flour. I should also say, when we dry a coconut from the Jali Fruit Co., there's the shell left over. And so we end up making our charcoal out of those shells. And so it's about upcycling all the byproducts of the original product that would have gone to waste to begin with, getting the maximum value we can for each of the communities that we work with. Here's our team. Well, this is the kind of the key people on the team. And I also have the dates that we all started this. I started this a few weeks into my freshman year of college. My first year. I wasn't a freshman, but that was where we got the idea of solar dehydrators. It was a school project that led us to Jamaica. We worked on one solar dehydrator. Originally, we were only supposed to create a business plan, and the business plan was supposed to be turning dried mangoes into beer, and that was going to be the market-based solution. So it was a very Milwaukee approach to how to help people. But there was a lot of pivots that happened in there. One, that was a very stupid idea, but that dried fruit was a very easy thing that had value behind it. So minimal processing, best value we can get at that scale. So that's what started the whole system to begin with. I want to focus on the impact here. I know that time's coming up pretty soon. So the women that we work with, and I say women because 2/3 of our cooperative members are, or sorry, the members of our network are women. Nearly all the cooperative members are women. And so we have a network of 40,000 farmers who supply the products. Many of those farmers have their fruits that would otherwise go to waste are purchased by women in cooperatives. And so the women buy those fruits and then they do the work during the day to dry them. And I'll focus on Jali fruit just for this. So Jali fruit, the women are able to make $15 to $20 per day revenue. So that's between $9 to $12 of profit if they bought those fruits themselves. That $9 to $12 of profit, that's compared to $1 to $2 per day for the average daily wage. So we're creating a massive difference for these women while also simultaneously not disrupting local economies. We're not suddenly displacing food supply chains, taking food out of a system that could otherwise use it. These are fruits that are in complete overabundance, would never otherwise be eaten. So we're taking those out, adding value to them, and then shipping them. We've also created livelihoods for just under 7,000 of those cooperative members. And the farmers separately just make more money because their products don't go to waste. Like I said, 2/3 of our farmers are women. There's a massive environmental benefit to what we do, from making sure that the water, energy, nutrients, et cetera, that was put into those seeds and turned into a product or into a fruit doesn't just go back, because you could think that I'm forgetting the term for it, but when you take leftover like banana peels and you put them in the backyard, compost. Thank you. when you're composting, you could think that that's fully recycling everything, and you're recycling it, but you're never getting back the water that was put into growing that fruit to begin with. You're never getting back the energy that was taken to harvest it, to transport it, to preserve it, to get it to your shelf, etc. And so by upcycling, which is adding value to the system and taking it out of a waste stream, you're capturing all those resources that are invisible at the point that you're holding the banana. But those inputs exist there that are ostensibly meant to create nutrients that humans can eat. So compost is good and it's recycling, but on a systemic level, upcycling is the ideal, where you can take resources out of the waste stream. And that's where AgriCycle comes in. We're connecting resources that would go to waste to smallholder farmers who are in a perfect place to be able to address it. So we connect the two problems together. Just on the SDGs, I would assume all of you are familiar with the SDGs at this point, but Sustainable Development Goals, AgriCycle is in a really unique position. Most groups try to focus on one or two. We don't focus on any of them in particular, except for one of them. All the others simply happen because of the model. We didn't set out, trying to achieve SDG number 12, responsible consumption and production. That really is just a business opportunity or an opportunity to plug into the model. Those are resources that are sitting in farmers' backyards that can create value out of it, rather than trying to come up with a different system that they don't already have access to. The one that we are focused on is zero poverty. AgriCycle's purpose and sole reason for existence is eradicating extreme rural poverty. Our model is focused on extreme rural poverty. We're not focused on urban poverty. Our solutions do not address that. There aren't urban farmers. We're not getting into urban agriculture, and that doesn't help extreme poverty anyway. There's a complete different subset of issues surrounding extreme urban poverty. We are focused on the rural side of it. But with that, we address SDGs 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15. And 17 is kind of the throwaway, but 17 as well. So we're able to take on half the SDGs just through a market-based approach to SDG number 1. If we weren't market-based, we wouldn't have any of these others on here. We would only have 1, 5, and 15. That's all that would happen, and that's what most nonprofits do. So our approach of combining all these systems together and creating a market for it, that's what really works for us. So I'm going to stop it there. I know there are a lot of comments that'll pop up now, but If you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Okay, I'm not seeing much in the chat, so I'm going to unmute everybody.
Yeah, so I have some questions.
Perfect.
A couple of things, just quickly, the amount of your sales, how you got started on this, and then if you could say more, I kind of missed what you were talking about, the African stories and the name of the brand or something.
Yeah, definitely. So sales to date since April, 350,000. We also raised money from both angel investors, impact investors, and venture capitalists. So a combination of like from greed to philanthropy, all through money. That's what backed our ability to get started. So that's sales to date. I should also say that Tropical Ignition is going to be launching in Menards next year as well. Target's very interested. So some of that Jolly Fruit Co. You can pick it up at Beans and Barley in Milwaukee. So make sure to stop by. As for how we got started, it was a college project run amok. We were originally supposed to do that business model around dried mangoes into beer. A few weeks in, we said that's stupid. We went to the National Science Foundation Innovation Corps through the university still. Iterated what we were doing. We tried creating a business model around dehydrators. Eventually met the Commons, and a fantastic organization in Milwaukee that helps college students learn entrepreneurial skills. We went through as one of the companies there. We ended up taking that idea and running with it, and that's when we left the scope of our university. That's where we really developed this whole model of market-based. With the school project, we created one dehydrator in Jamaica, and we delivered it, and we built it with them, and we taught them how to use it. Apart from all the issues that were surrounding that, which I don't have time to get into, but essentially the farmers said, "Fantastic, I have a dehydrator. Who the hell cares?" They didn't have the ability to meet food safety standards, get any sort of certifications. They couldn't get the export logistics figured out. They couldn't get it imported to the United States or any other market that would buy it. They didn't know how to brand it. They definitely couldn't market it, and they had nobody to sell it. They spelled out the necessary business model. They didn't list all those things in the way that I did, but they spelled out the need for a vertically integrated supply chain, something that started at the lowest level of technology and teaching farmers and ultimately getting it onto a shelf. And that's what the farmers could actually benefit from. That's that missing link that I really point to. With lots of nonprofits will come in with the technology, or if they're a good nonprofit, they'll come in with the technology and training and certifications, and they'll give somebody a phone number. But there are very few groups out there that take a social entrepreneurship approach to building that full supply chain. So that's very. I forgot your third question, but
I didn't quite get what you were saying, something about the storytelling or the stories with the, I think, the African group.
Yeah, very short. Each of the QR codes on the Jolly Fruit Co. Are hand labeled. So we have hundreds of QR codes that we put on the bags. They're traced specific. So, our Joseph, our food safety manager, he manages the entire logistics of that and making sure that like the QR code is specific to each cooperative. When you scan it, it takes you to a web page telling you the story of the women who tried it, the farmers who grew it, and where in the world it came from.
Oh. Yeah, here is a bag with at the bottom the barcode.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or the scan code.
Definitely.
Oh, great project you got there.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, I'm greatly impressed also. My question is about the plastic trays in your dehydrator. Could you possibly use some local wood or something that help give another dimension of local economic development and replace plastic? An oil product, and maybe there's something else that might further help your local local folks?
Definitely. So really good question. That's actually where we started. We started, you know, the true appropriate technology approach is that also materials are sourced locally, manufacturing happens locally. And that doesn't even mean from main cities. That means everything should be accessed from the nearest town. We made it out of, you know, there is some transparent material that's needed. There's no naturally occurring material that's transparent because the sun needs to come through on a normal dehydrator. And so there was a plastic sheet that was needed. Apart from that, it was locally cut lumber. It was mud fired bricks that made it plaster. The issue is that those systems made out of organic materials ultimately can't create a truly food grade environment. And because we are focused on SDG number 1, no poverty, and eradicating extreme rural poverty, our focus was on creating a market-based solution for them rather than on optimizing the environmental benefit we had. If we were focused on the environmental benefit, we would focus on local markets only, and trying to develop local markets would not make nearly as much of a difference on the market creation and on reducing poverty, but would help the environment more. The other thing I'll note is that our dehydrators, while they are made out of plastic, we're moving to bioplastic made out of upcycled coffee grounds. So that's a cool partnership that we're working on right now. So ultimately we are addressing it, but I will say from a principled approach, if that didn't exist and if all we had was plastic or local wood, we would choose the plastic because it gets to our goal.
Okay, there is a question in the chat. So if, I can read it. This comes from Frank Schultz. Do you have plans to expand into other products and areas?
Yeah, definitely. So the first I'll say, we're primarily in sub-Saharan Africa. We're expanding to Latin America currently. Eventual plans to get to Southeast Asia as well. With the products, we have dried fruit currently. We have sustainable charcoal. We have an ingredient supplying back end to all of this. So, you know, these brands that we're creating are really proving to our two CPG manufacturers, consumer packaged goods, that the value propositions we have, fully traceable, upcycled, ethically sourced, are valuable. Sorry. And that consumers are looking for those things, which allows us to then sell the ingredients at a higher volume. Farmers don't care how we sell it ultimately. If we're selling it in a bag that's labeled Jali and tells their story, or if we're selling it as an ingredient, we pay the same amount to the farmers regardless. And so the volume that we move is what we're focused on. We do have plans to eventually launch new brands, but we are focused on the Jali Fruit Co., Tropical Ignition, and Ola Coral currently, because that's more than enough for us to get started with.
Can I ask about the lionfish? Where are you getting the lionfish?
So that's supply chain is being built out of Belize currently.
Out of where?
Belize.
Belize. I've spent quite a bit of time snorkeling in the Caribbean, and I've seen lionfish, and it's pretty difficult to get groups of people to exterminate them. And so, yeah, I think if you put a price on their head, the locals will definitely get rid of them.
And that's literally what we're doing. And it makes sense. Nobody would hunt lobster if it, you know, at the scale that they do, if it didn't have a price attached to it. So using basic fundamental economic principles, you know, it's hard, you know, and Belizeans do kill lionfish, actually. Like there's a massive awareness of the lionfish issue, of the devastation of the coral reefs, both for local tourism and what that means for their economy, but also for the environment at large. And the ecosystem, every lionfish eats, I think it's 400,000 fish per year. I mean, they're monsters. they're insane, and they eat the fish that protect the coral reefs, which is why the coral reefs die. So there's current nonprofits that try killing lionfish, and that works, and those are good solutions. But the nonprofits require donations from bigger organizations to do it, and then they have a bunch of overhead to organize it, and ultimately, you know, 60-70% of the money gets paid to fishermen to go kill it. They have great fishing drives for it and competitions, and those are good systems, but it's not a sustainable solution that can be done at scale. When we're paying $1 to $2 per fish, that's a solution that can be done at scale. We just have to develop a market for the product, and that's where AgriCycle comes in, and that's our model of doing things.
Josh,
Go ahead.
as a Jungian analyst, I'm very interested in myths and stories, and given your answer before, just wondering how easy it might be if there were any myths or stories about the particular products in the area, if on the website that people could go to for that particular area, if that could be put up. That would be another dimension, but just
really
putting it
interesting.
out there.
So the website for tropical is still being fine-tuned. There's an area in Liberia that we wish that we could work with, that coconut shells, using coconut shells, or I think it's coconut shells or coconuts as a whole is taboo, despite the fact that they have a massive abundance of coconuts. They're one of the most abundant regions in Liberia that has it. And so we've been talking to them about seeing if there's flexibility, like if it's not done there, basically, can we pay them for the coconuts that are going to waste and they have nothing to do with? But it is a really interesting myth that they have surrounding coconuts. Also Liberia is really interesting too. The coconuts in one area that the coconut shells are brought over on a canoe across a channel of the ocean, of the Atlantic. And that's really a process. Some very cool stories and imagery from it. And I'd also answer, would like to see your products at Outpost. We would too, and Outpost would as well. It's interesting. There's an entire back end to it. Before we can supply Outpost, they say that we have to be working with one of the main distributors. So UNFI or KEHI, they distribute natural foods. And so to work with them, they say that we need between 20 to 25 stores in a region that would buy our product before they'll work with us. So it's this whole chicken or egg thing of we have to get each side to inch one step closer toward the middle. So we're pretty close to it, but we definitely want to be an Outpost.
The other products besides the dried fruit, can you buy those online?
Yeah, so Jali fruit can be purchased, and I'll put it here. Jollyfruit.co. So that's where you can go currently for where our Jali fruit is. Easy shipping, unique subscription packs, all of it. Tropical Ignition is going to be launching next summer, and that's our sustainable charcoal. So that is not currently available, but it will be. You also will be able to pick it up at any local Menards. And the goal will also be in any local Target in the Midwest.
What about the lionfish?
So the lionfish jerky that's coming to market. Currently, we're doing actually fresh, the fresh seafood supply chain. So selling fillets. The goal for the jerkies is that it'll be a summer launch of next year as well.
So is Beans and Barley the only place to get the fruit now in Milwaukee?
The only grocery store right now. We also have, we're spread out larger. We've had some trouble getting into the Milwaukee stores, but we want to be in Sendex. We want to be in Outpost. If you go to Madison, we actually have more distribution there. But apart from that, I'd also say that Lake Effect Co., which is not a grocery store, but we also have our Jali fruit there.
Yeah, I'd suggest our little River West food pantry.
Co-op.
Food co-op. They specialize in local stuff, and they're also supplied by UNFI, so it'd be another outlet that might help you reach your critical mass there. And a number of us are members of the co-op there, so if you need an advocate to help you get in there, we can help you.
That would actually be fantastic, because that's what we need. Thank you.
How is COVID affecting your ability to expand your business. I would assume travel is not very easy.
Yeah, so we were in my whole team, the American team, the East African team, the West African team. We were all together in Kenya, March, what is it, like 15th, whenever Trump made the announcement that all travel from Europe is banned, all cargo from Europe is banned. And so we bought emergency flights out of there, thinking like, all right, we have to be in the U.S. to actually sell this stuff. We have to get back now. There's only like in the next 24 hours, State Department said, Americans are allowed back whenever. Department of Homeland Security said, and cargo is allowed. Like, that's not true. So there's a big scare at first because he wasn't very specific. He also said midnight on Friday, which could have meant 11:59 p.m. Friday, or it could have meant 12 a.m. Friday. And there's a 59 minute difference between those two things. So that also affected it. But we had to bounce back. Kenya locked down the very next day. So there were those issues at first. Where we went after that, it was hard for us to expand our farmer network. That was one piece of it. We had to actually create a mostly digital training system. So it forced us to innovate. We made a bulk SMS platform that allowed us to communicate with our farmers, deliver training, information, and materials. It ultimately actually freed up our field officers to reach more people. So that was an accident, but it was good. As for how COVID has affected us negatively, we wanted to launch Tropical Ignition this summer while our charcoal was ready. Liberia had one of the most stringent shutdowns. People were allowed out of their homes for 3 hours a day. It doesn't work very well for people to be able to manufacture products. While we had our charcoal done already, almost every other manufacturer shut down. That meant there were no products to be put onto the boats, and the boats refused to move for months because it's not worth it to them to travel with 5 containers of charcoal on it. So that was a big issue, and scuttled our launch for this year.
Okay, this is probably a good time to stop, seeing as the Packer game is getting started. And I want to thank you again for being able to share this with us. And if you want to review any of it, you should be able to find it on the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee YouTube page.
Sounds good.
So yeah, under videos, you should find it.
I just wanted to say to Josh, this is Lorraine. I'm so happy that you could join us today. And I think that you have grown amazing structure from mango beer. I don't know how you moved from mango beer to all that you're doing, but it's a beautiful thing. And thank you for bringing the story to us.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, goodbye all. I'm ending the meeting.
Thank you.